What's up, guys? It's Joe, back again talking about the Kansas State Wildcats, and I know that it might not sound that way, but my voice is getting closer to normal, so we're at least in the home stretch of that front. But if you saw the thumbnail, I want to give it to you straight up. This video is going to be talking about the quarterback position, comparison between Will Howard, Avery Johnson, and what some of my closest friends think about that. I decided that because the conversation has grown so big, I decided to ask 10 of my closest people that I think that are really respectable and knowledgeable about the game of football, specifically around Kansas State, guys that cover K-State, guys that cover college football. I asked 10 people around me, as well as did a fan vote on YouTube and Twitter, to discuss the situation with Will Howard, Avery Johnson. And before I start telling you what everybody said, I do want to mention this. One, if you like Kansas State content, I make videos every couple of days talking about the Wildcats, so be sure and hit the subscribe button. If you do, I'm giving away a lavender quarter zip, much like the one I'm wearing here. Once we hit 2,000 subs, we already gave one away at 1,000, so this will be the second iteration of that. But this is what I wanted to say. Quick disclaimer, I know your opinion might not be the same as mine. I know my opinion might not be the same as XYZ person. It's not a one-track mind for everybody. However, this video is in no way intended to shame either quarterback, to talk about why one guy's better than the other or why one guy's better than the other. I just saw a ton of people talking about it, and I wanted to ask some people I think are really knowledgeable in the situation, hear what they have to say, and then compare my thoughts as well. So with that being said, let me read you this roster of people we asked today. I went around, I asked some podcast people, I asked some sports coverage people, a couple of different guys at different websites. This is the roster of what we have. To start off, I asked the guys from the Mobcast. If you haven't heard their podcast, it's incredible. You should listen. Eric, Special Teams U from the Mobcast, you can check it out. Caleb at Email Caleb, check his stuff out. And then at Adam Tritt is another good guy in the Mobcast. Then I went to the Go Powercat front, and I talked to my boy Ryan Gilbert. Shout out Ryan. Love Ryan. Ryan, if you're watching this, I love you. Fitz, the man himself. Tim Fitzgerald, owner and creator of GoPowerCat.com. Love him to death. He had to answer, had to hear what he had to say. Friend of the channel here, who's been on the channel in the past for an interview, Mr. John Kurtz. Maybe I shouldn't say Mr., he's not, 58 years old, but he's a really good dude. Love talking to him and loved hearing what he had to say. Co-host on the 3 Mile podcast as well, Cole Manbeck, wanted to hear his opinion. Staying with the KC Sports Network, I asked my friend Jasmine Halliburton. She has a show called Run It Back. She does great work as well. And the last person being the man on the island here, Mr. Glenn Kinley from KSNT in Topeka. He is a dog in the newsroom, and he knows what he's talking about. So I asked those guys and girls, I talked about, hey, what does this comparison mean to you? What are you hearing? What do you think about it going forward? And I didn't mean to just say, who is better? Who is the starting quarterback? Because I think that's pretty much been answered by the coaching staff and by everybody affiliated with K-State, but I was curious their opinion because they're so knowledgeable on the topic. So I wanted to ask that. Starting off here with my guy, Eric, and before we get into his exact response, let me say the question I pitched everyone was pretty comparable. I basically said, hey, is there a reason to talk about the quarterback position? Who's the guy? Without saying, who's the guy? Who do you think? I kind of just wanted to hear thoughts from each person on the quarterback debate, where the coaching staff's headed, what the team's doing, and what needs to change going forward. So that's kind of the question I posed. Obviously, there's some extra words in there, but that's just the gist of it. Starting off with Eric, we got this. I think it's ridiculous that our fan base is willing to give up on Will Howard after one poor game. He's committed his entire career to Kansas State and worked hard in the background when Adrian Martinez was named the starter. He came in and took us to a Big 12 championship and an NY6. He has a good start. He's had a good start to the year until Oklahoma State, and then everyone wants him gone. We haven't seen enough of Avery to know he's even better than Will at the moment. I still have confidence in Will. I still remember the Tulane game and how we responded to Norman. Now, the Norman response is a good part. Bringing up the absolute 180 from one of the grossest games of all time with Tulane to one of the best games of the last decade in Norman, K-State responding in such a great fashion, that's a great argument. And I don't want to go too much on my thoughts in between each of these, but I'm just giving, when something stands out, I want to comment on it. And then I'll wrap it up with my thoughts in the end, as well as the fan vote. Moving on to Caleb, it's Email Caleb, formerly Punish Caleb. Fun fact. Caleb goes, while I think Avery should be playing 10 snaps or so a game because he's such a dynamic athlete, Will Howard played one bad football game at Stillwater and has won us a Big 12 title. There is no question he should be the starting quarterback. Will has made some boneheaded plays before Stillwater, sure, but he's also played very well outside of a few decisions with the football up until the Oklahoma State game. I agree. I mean, that's really it. Obviously, it's been the vocal minorities, so it's not just me responding to all of K-State or saying that everybody wants, Will Howard gone or whatever the case is, but I think that asking these people for their opinions is really interesting because you get to hear kind of not only their thought process, but how they feel about the situation beyond just what is on paper, what we've seen on film, what's in the building. Some of these people are connected that way. Next one, Adam Tripp, my guy. Shout out Adam. You can find all the social media from everybody on here in the description of the video. It'll also have, these guys have their podcast. Kurtz and Manbeck have a podcast. Also, Derek Young. Shout out Derek. I want to link everybody's shows and stuff in the description, so be sure and check each person out if you're interested. Here's what Adam had to say. I know Kansas State isn't looking that great as of right now. However, that doesn't have to be you. You can look incredible by supporting @Astra Sports apparel on Instagram as well as in the merch shop. They've got some kick-ass K-State shirt designs as well as the one I'm wearing here. I know Will Howard may not be your favorite guy at the moment, but you cannot deny the design. It's beautiful. Check it out. It is based off of a Clint Eastwood movie, Fistful of Dollars. I'm going to get it right this time, even though I mismovied it last time. Check out the design. It's pretty sweet. It's also comfort colors, and it feels great. In case you haven't had comfort colors, it's the same shirts that they do for sorority or fraternity designs, usually in most houses, whether that be K-State or anywhere at this point. They're awesome. I love them. And there's a ton of different designs on the shop. You can check out the Bill Snyder one, the Tex Winter one. There's a couple of different things you can pick of. And I do want to say this before I get out of here, before I get back to the video. The best part about it, it supports a current Kansas State student. Buddy of mine on campus makes the shirts, and they are to die for. I hope you enjoy them. There is also a 10% off link in the description, along with the link to the merch shop. I hope you guys pick something up cool. If you do, go ahead and let me know on Twitter. I would love to see that. Outside of that, guys, I will let you get back to the video right now. I think Will is still the guy. Of course, K-State fans had high expectations coming off a Big 12 title season. While I understand Avery is new and exciting, I believe some fans are perhaps burying the lead here. Will Howard is battle-tested, has experience, and has the clutch factor. I don't want this to be interpreted as Will has earned the right to lose a game, because that's silly, but at the end of the day, he's shown he has the sauce when it matters, OSU performance aside. With that in mind, I really would have liked to see Avery get some snaps during the UCF game once it was clear that we were going to win. K-State's play calling has been a bit lackluster recently, and I figure the more we can put on film against our opponents, the better. The other story is whether or not the staff is trying to redshirt him. If he is really who we think he is, there's no point in trying to save him for an imaginary fifth year that isn't going to happen. Great response from Adam. Couple of things to unpack there. First one being I don't want it to be interpreted as Will has earned the right to lose a game. I think that's a great distinction, saying something like that. That's kind of what it feels like through a lot of the arguments for Will is it's like, you know what? You got to ride with this guy because of this reason. I get why he's saying that because it's important to note, we're not just throwing Will out there because he deserves the right to either win or lose. It's not the case at this point. It is interesting to see the conversation around Avery, and that's a theme you find in here of people talking about, we got to get this kid on the field, but there's a specific time and place for it. Moving on here, next person, Ryan Gilbert. And before I get into Ryan's stuff, I should probably say there's not one right answer here. I mean, there's a general consensus I'm seeing, but there isn't a one right answer. So if your answer differentiates, don't come after these people and say, I hate you, you suck. If you're going to do that to me, don't do it to them. I set them up for this, so to speak. I didn't set anybody up, but that's just going to be the vibe, I suppose. Mr. Ryan Gilbert, GoPowerCat.com, does a great job. Follow him on Twitter. Ryan says, Will Howard is QB1. I think the world of Avery Johnson, but comparing a Big 12 champion to a redshirt freshman is just silly. While Will Howard has been far from perfect this season, he's not the main problem. Yeah, I mean, that's bars. Ryan is spitting facts there. The specific line of comparing a Big 12 champion to a redshirt freshman is just, that's what takes the cake right there. I mean, yeah, there's not a ton to unpack there and say that he's wrong or he's right for this reason or this reason, but I think he's doing something good there with the lines. Moving on to Fitz. I mean, the man, the myth, the legend himself, the face of K-State coverage, and it's a beautiful one at that. Fitz is a beautiful man. We all love Fitz. Fitz, the reality, this is what Fitz says. I should probably start with that. Fitz goes, the reality is there's no quarterback controversy. Will Howard is Kansas State's starting quarterback. However, the lack of use of Avery Johnson is curious because he's one of the better athletes on the team. How the coaches don't have Johnson prepared for each week to offer something different to the offense to supplement Howard's play is mystifying. Shout out Fitz for using the adjective mystifying. That's a perfect description. Yeah, I mean, that's a good way to bet. Seeing Avery on the sidelines kind of hurts my soul a little bit because, the OSU game, you saw how effective we were with the quarterback runs. And I've never been the biggest, quarterback run guy. You saw it with the Snyder era where you lose multiple starting quarterbacks because you have the quarterback as your leading rusher. Obviously not the same situation, but Texas Tech had that going a little bit early this year. Quarterback gets hurt, different situation. Don't quote me saying that it's because he ran so much. But that happens in college football. What I don't quite understand is, you saw a good tasting of Avery in the Missouri game, and you saw what he could do with his legs. If the threat to throw and run is there, we got to have a package that fits, not specifically fits, shout out Fitz, but we should have a package that fits both his arm and his legs. I think that's going to be a good thing to see. Moving on to John Kurtz. Now, John Kurtz understood the assignment. He went above and beyond in this. So John has he earned the title for most written here. actually sent a video and we transcribed it because John's the best. So this is what he had to say. Look, Will Howard has not been playing good football. I will not sit here and profess that he actually is. But I would say he's probably taken a little bit too much of the blame. There's a lot of people that seem totally convinced that the offense would be significantly different if he were out there. And I will get to Avery Johnson here in a minute. I do wish he would have played something against Oklahoma State, absolutely. But there are some deep-seated issues on this offense. I think the wide receiver room could use a little bit more toughness. I'm not a huge fan of some of the routes that are being run. It just doesn't really seem like anything is crisp with them, and the guys aren't getting open much. There's been some miscommunication, and some of that is on Will. He's got to realize, hey, if you're not communicating very well with these receivers, and you're not figuring out what's going on with the different route combinations, like option routes, great point, you probably need to be a bit more careful. But he's not getting a ton of help out there. Also, the offensive line late in the game felt like Will was really running for his life. It's been inconsistent, which I think is a pretty fair way to frame how the O-line has played so far this year. So I would use a little bit of caution in putting everything on Will so far this year. Moving on to Avery. This is still Kurtz mentioning his Avery Johnson thoughts. Do I wish that Avery Johnson would have played against Oklahoma State? Yes, I do. That is a perplexing one to me because they would build a package for him in the Missouri game, and I understand why he doesn't play against UCF because the offense just rolled. I think they were probably prepared to play him against UCF, but the offense had no problems. It's peculiar to me that when you just desperately need a spark, the offense isn't coming up with anything, and the most successful thing that you were doing on Friday against OSU was the quarterback run. I'm surprised that Avery didn't get to run in that game, but I would also not be sprinting to say, hey, Avery Johnson needs to be the starting quarterback right now necessarily. I would like to see him incorporated a little bit more, continuing to use him in the offense. I don't think a red shirt is anything that's going to matter in his career because he's far too good for that. However, I am not one of those people that's just demanding that he be the starting quarterback. I think K-State's issues run deeper. This is an important sentence here because I think Kurtz, it's a softball and Kurtz smacks it 850 feet out of the stadium, out of 4 different stadiums, I might add. I think K-State's issues run deeper. I think it's a nice way to package everything right now if you're a frustrated fan, person, or supporter of the program to say, snap your fingers, switch to the quarterback, and everything will be right. Unfortunately, I don't think that's the case. I think it's a more complicated issue. Bars, pay the man. Pay the man. That's a great thing to say. Saying, hey, Will Howard's the issue, get him out, and we're a Big 12 championship team, that's an easier conversation to have in the mind of everybody. You don't have to worry about, O-line's not looking good, secondary's not looking good, receivers aren't getting open. That was the thing I took away, but also the conversation about the option route. The option route, your receiver has an option. Obviously, you have the option to pull it or, to pass it or run it in that case. Your receiver also doesn't know if it's a passing play or if it's a rushing play immediately off the jump. So sometimes you see a little bit of lays out of the top of the route just because that's how it goes. With that, I will say Will has to be careful. He mentioned it there. You got to keep your head on a swivel. Okay, there was a route that one of the picks, I think it was in the UCF game, I could be wrong, where Keegan Johnson just gets completely run off the line of scrimmage on an RPO, and Will throws it to the defender because Keegan Johnson's on the ground. There's no effort to get to the ball and break it up. Can you expect your receiver to be a DB in that case? Technically, no, but there's got to be more effort from the guys. Cole Manbeck here, another one of the KCSN guys, co-host of the 3 Mile Pod. They do a great job. If you haven't checked out their podcast, I assume you have, but you definitely should be. Cole Manbeck says this: I think Will Howard is still the guy and should be the guy. Yes, he's making too many mistakes, but they're not all on him. It's a collection of errors across the board on offense, and everyone owns a part in it. However, for an offense lacking explosiveness and receivers' ability to separate, they need to go to Avery every game to give them a spark. You just can't keep that type of talent off the field for the entirety of the game. And when they do go to Avery, give him more of the playbook, not just run options. So Manbeck knows what he's talking about. I mean, these are all, everybody in this list knows what they're talking about. I'll say that now. But I think he's in the right sense because who's been the best player on offense for K-State? DJ Giddens, maybe? Ben Sinnott, maybe? Those guys have the ability to make big plays, but is there a guy that sparks the team? Is there that kind of guy that says, you know what, it's going here. We got to have a big play. This is who we're going to. You haven't really seen that from anybody yet at this season. I was hoping it'd be a Keegan Johnson or an RJ Garcia. Haven't fully seen that to this point in the season. So I like the idea of, hey, all right, 1st and 10, give it DJ. DJ goes up the middle for 4 yards. Why not 2nd and 6, put Avery out there? He has the chance to run it, and if not, he can take a shot down the field. I think that's a good argument to say, but it's not a throw Will on the side, keep Will on the side, put him in the base. It's none of that. So I appreciate Cole for bringing some of those thoughts in. Last of the KCSN crew, Jasmine Halliburton. She does a great job with Run It Back, formerly of Wildcat 91.9 fame. That's where we met. Shout out to Jasmine. You should definitely be checking out her stuff. She does a great job. This is what Jasmine had to say. Will Howard is QB1, God willing he stays healthy. This is a vicious cycle we've seen, and it would continue if they bench Will for Avery, because unless he looks like a future number 1 overall pick, they'll treat him just like they did Will when he took over for Skyler. Fans would give Avery 2 games to look like a true freshman, and by game 3, they're going to ask for Jake Rubley. Like, people, be real. Be for real, excuse me. I can hear Jasmine saying this, and that's what I appreciate about her commentary. She is, her opinion. She makes it known, and she's not shy about it, which I appreciate. That's the way to say it. I mean, that's really what it is. You see this cycle. I mean, it happened with Alex Delton. It happened with Will Howard. It happened with Skylar Thompson. That is college football to an extent, but it doesn't have to be. So that's all I'd say is when we see players struggle, it's not just the best thing. Yeah, he's not the guy. Get him out there. And I will say this for the Avery Johnson crew. I get that it's not just who's the backup quarterback, get that guy out there. It is the fact that you have a top 10 quarterback in the history of the program out there on the sideline waiting for a shot. I get where you're coming from on that sense. However, we got one more person to talk to before we get to the fan vote and my opinion real quick. Mr. Glenn Kinley, I told you earlier, he's kind of, he's the lone KSNT guy that we talked to today. He's a dog in the newsroom. I mean, he's the guy on the scene. I feel like I see a different tweet from Glenn every week with something incredible. This is what Glenn had to say. Also, before I get into it, also does a great job with insiders with Go Power Cat. So I guess I could have grouped him into the Go Power Cat guys. But the bottom line is Will is their guy, and I don't expect that to change. If the season goes south and he continues to struggle, I'm having a tough time, and he continues to struggle, perhaps that conversation is had, but we're not there yet. With that being said, Will can be the starter with Avery still playing a few snaps each game to keep the defenses guessing. This is the subtle flex of Glenn, is the access this guy has. Chris Kleiman said on Tuesday that Avery Johnson not playing has nothing to do with the redshirt possibility. He also said he trusts Colin Klein and his decisions, and he thinks that Wildcat fans should try to trust that guy too, or should trust that guy too. Quite frankly, I agree with him. Yeah, I mean, that's bars. Glenn knows what he's talking about. He's there every week. He sees Kleiman, he sees Klein, he sees he sees Will Howard, he sees Avery Johnson. He's one of the guys in the room, so you at least hear that from him, and it's nice to see that, the extra level of background. But, which is an interesting question here, let me tell you this. I did a fan vote on both Twitter and YouTube, and I didn't know if any of you would see it. 188 of you saw it, which I appreciate everyone who voted on that. Did I expect what happened? Honestly, not. I kind of expected the vocal minority to take over and kind of run the poll. We had 122 votes for Will Howard, 65% of the vote, and 66 for Avery Johnson, 35% of the vote. I don't know what I expected. I think that, when the squeakiest oil gets the wheel, so you expect people to kind of jump to the Avery thing immediately. I was kind of impressed that it didn't immediately say, 51% Avery Johnson, 49% Will, or something in that range. I don't want to make this video to say that Avery's the guy or Will's the guy. I don't want to make the sense to say what you have to think. But if you're going to have that conversation, I would encourage you to look at some of the people. I mean, these are some of the smartest people in the K-State community, know what's happening in the locker room. They know what's going on in the field a little bit. They've been around the sport for the last decade for most of them. But there is a degree of hey, what do these sportscasters know? What do these people know? You can feel that same way about me. I'm never going to tell you that I know the right thing to do all the time, but I just wanted to give you guys some opinions to build that argument off of in your mind when you're going to have that conversation, because I know, family gatherings, there's going to be a Will Howard guy, there's going to be an Avery Johnson guy. How's that going to go? You know what I mean? You have some more background on that. Just things to consider as you're considering what happens on the field this season. I would say this, the general consensus being that Will Howard's the guy, plus the general consensus that there is, I shouldn't say general consensus so many times, but I apologize, plus the understanding that there's a lot of issues with this team right now. That's kind of where I'm at too. I've told you some of my thoughts in the past, and I've kind of agreed as we went through this. There's people that are more like Avery has to hit the field. 5 to 10 snaps, get Avery out there, let him make some plays. But I've kind of talked about it. We got to become more of a rushing team. I fully believe that when you have struggling playmakers, that's the kryptonite for a lot of defenses. Just, hey, let's go to the running attack. We've got a stud in DJ Giddens. Let's figure this out together. But guys, I appreciate you listening. Once again, if you enjoyed this content, go ahead and consider subscribing. Once again, please don't come for any of these people on this list. They're doing me a solid by putting their opinions out there, and I appreciate that. Thank you guys so much for listening. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and go Cats.